For more on this story, let's turn to Gulliver Cragg in the Ukrainian capital. For France 24, Gulliver, a Russian lawmaker, is saying that Ukraine's military was given a warning about 15 minutes before entering the zone. What is Ukraine's media saying about what happened?
Well, I think the most important thing to really underline is that Ukraine disputes the claim that there were 74 people on board the plane at all. The human rights ombudsman for the Ukrainian parliament, Dmytro Lubinets, was saying today that there has been no evidence so far of a large number of people having been on board the plane. No pictures of any body parts whatsoever have surfaced. And that's, in a way, Exhibit A, in terms of the various different theories being put about on Ukrainian media to suggest that the Russians' version of events is not true. The Ukrainian media overwhelmingly today are devoted to discussing what exactly happened from the angle of this must be some kind of Russians' communication operation in order to discredit Ukraine in the eyes of its partners, for Ukraine's Western partners to suggest they can't supply the country with the weapons it needs because they don't know how to use them, because they might misuse them and lead to tragedies like this. Very, very little credence is being given to the Russian version of events at all on Ukrainian media. And if it is, they're underlining, and this is to some degree justified, I think, that the Russians bear responsibility for not having adequately informed the Ukrainians that this plane was carrying these prisoners, if indeed it was. Now you've got this Russian parliamentarian saying that they did, but the Ukrainians have clearly stated, and they're sticking to their claim, that they were not informed of any prisoners of war being carried on this plane. And I think, the main thing really to communicate to international audiences is that regardless of what the truth is, it seems to me that very few people in Ukraine at the moment believe that those prisoners of war were on the plane. Perhaps that's wishful thinking, because of course it's an almost unthinkable tragedy if it really was a Ukrainian missile that was responsible for their deaths.
Yeah, that's true. If we're going to stick to the narrative of there were prisoners on board that were supposed to be swapped. We've had a number of them so far, not many, but a number of those prisoner swaps have already taken place, sometimes with prisoners that Ukraine didn't even know were being held by Russia, that they believed had disappeared or may have been killed. What now going forward for these prisoner swaps? Are they going to continue
Well, the one that was supposed to take place yesterday did not take place, of course. It was apparently supposed to involve more than 190 prisoners of war. So there are others who, according to the Russian narrative, are not dead. But I don't think that there's any likelihood of them being swapped anytime soon. It's a tragedy for the families, of course, and for the prisoners themselves. As for those who the Russians are claiming were on the plane, there was a list not officially put out, but put out by Margarita Simonyan of RT, of names. Unfortunately, of course, it seems there's a high risk that those people, if they didn't die in this plane crash, if they weren't on the plane, that they were either already dead or will now have to be killed because the Russians have let their names out. So, it's just absolutely agonizing for their loved ones. And this is an event that also underlines something that families of Ukrainian prisoners of war or Ukrainian missing in action soldiers have been complaining about for a long time, which is that Russia does not allow them to communicate with the prisoners, often does not even tell the ICRC, despite its obligations under the Geneva Conventions, whether or not it's holding these people, certainly doesn't give information about where they're being held or how they're being transported, except up until yesterday, at the very last minute, they normally give information to the Ukrainian intelligence services and others who are involved in the actual organization of the prisoner swaps.
Gulliver Cragg reporting live there from Kyiv. Thank you so much for joining us.